Okay, Chair, I'll hand the meeting over to you as we are now streaming live.
Thanks, Amanda. So good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's Virtual Audit and Governance Committee on the 26th of November 2020. I am your Chair, Councillor Sam Hawkins. I'd like to welcome anyone watching this meeting via the live stream. I've invited Councillor Dean Barrow to act as my Vice Chair today. Is the committee happy with this? I'll take the silence as an acceptance. Shout now if you disagree with that. All participants are here today taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who's disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn off any telephone devices or to silent. As this committee meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made, and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Please can you now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Barrow.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Did you say Bailey?
I did.
Oh yes, I'm present, but I'm sorry I need to leave at 3:30. Thank you.
Councillor Cahill.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward. Councillor King.
Present.
Oh, I'm just letting Councillor Twist into the meeting as we speak. I'll just wait for him to come in and confirm his presence. Good afternoon, Councillor Twist. Could you confirm your presence, please?
Yeah, I'm here. Who's that? Amanda. Hi.
It is, yes. Hello. Thank you, Phil. I can confirm you are quorate today, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Agenda item number 1 is public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item number 2 is minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 24th September 2020, please do this by raising your blue hand. If I have no blue hands raised, I'll take this as an indication that you all agree to the minutes of the previous meeting. Excellent. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting are agreed. Agenda item number 3 is apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Jeff Pook. And I think that's everyone. So on to agenda item number 4, declarations of interest. This will be done by roll call by Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hawkins.
No declarations.
Councillor Barrow.
None.
Councillor Bailey.
None.
Sorry, Councillor Bailey, I didn't hear that.
None. Thank you.
Councillor Cahill.
None.
Councillor Gazzard.
None, thank you.
Councillor King.
Apologies.
Councillor,
None.
right, thank you.
Sorry.
And Councillor Twiss.
None that I'm aware of, Amanda, thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda. Agenda item number 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Agenda item number 6, confidential and exempt items. There are no confidential exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way. Agenda item 7, statement of accounts 2019-20, including annual government statement. It's a report by John Sims. Over to you, John.
Can I take that, Chair, if it's okay?
If you can. I don't mind who takes it. Sorry, I'm taking from the script.
Thank you. Members of the Audit and Governance Committee should have received an email earlier in the week regarding what will be item 9 on your agenda, Grant Thornton audit report. So we're at the stage whereby we were hoping to bring you statement of accounts ready for you to adopt and sign off at this meeting. Following, you'd have heard from Grant Thornton in terms of their audit findings. Normally the process is they'll give you the audit findings. We will say what we have or haven't adjusted in the statement of accounts, and then the committee would sign off at that point if they were happy. The audit hasn't been completed yet, so we're not at the point where we can actually recommend the statement of accounts for you to sign off. I'm sure Steve probably particularly will go into a bit more detail, but in terms of the report that's on your agenda item 9, there's some items that Grant Thornton still needed to complete in order to finalise their audit and make their recommendations or make their comments on the accounts. There is a key element that we're in discussion with, and what I think I'll do is I'll wait till we get to the Grant Thornton report. They can explain their view of it, and then I'm happy to sort of answer questions from the authority's point of view. It is a technical capital accounting issue that we're in discussion about. Just to reassure you, at this stage, it has no effect on the bottom line in terms of the income and expenditure account, has no effect to the general fund, housing revenue account, or any of your cash reserves. It is, and we will get onto the technical side of it, but it is around how the treatment of certain capital items. So in terms of your agenda, and I have discussed this with the chair, I think we're going to have to defer item 7 and come back to you in terms of being able to present to you a statement of accounts when the audit's finalised. And likewise, the letter of representation, we would sign off at the same date that the accounts are signed off. So those 2 items we will defer with your agreement. We suggest, originally I suggested to Grant Thornton, but we'll have to have that discussion, that we hopefully could come back to you within the next couple of weeks in terms of representing the accounts. But actually, I think, bearing in mind the work of the accountancy team at the moment in completion of budgets, that might just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it might be in early January that we come back to you, but we need that discussion in terms of availability of Grant Thornton as well. So with your permission, I'd like to defer items 7 and 8 to a future meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee.
Thank you, Simon. Steve, you've got your hand up.
Oh, I wasn't sure which Steve you meant.
Sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having heard what Simon has had to say and read the lengthy email, I would support what is being suggested, and I would recommend that we defer items 7 and 8 until further notice.
Thank you, Councillor Gazza. Happy to take that as a proposal. Can I have a seconder, please? I can see 2 hands. I'll take Councillor Barrow's the first hand up. Thank you. I'll take it straight to a vote unless anyone's got anything pressing they want to say. So if you can use your green ticks, red crosses, please.
For the benefit of those watching online, the vote is now taking place. And Chair, I have 6 votes in support of that, none against and no abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's therefore passed. On that basis, item number 8 is deferred until later. So on to item number 9, which is the audit finding report from Grant Thornton. We've got both Steve and Jackson from Grant Thornton, so I'll hand over to whichever one of you two want to speak first, please.
Thank you, Chair. So if I start off that, and then maybe I'll hand over to Steve for a bit more of the detail. And thanks also to Simon for the kind of the explanation and the briefing before this item. So given the discussion we've just had, I wasn't proposing to go through our quite lengthy report in huge amounts of detail, because what I propose to do is do that at the committee meeting where the final version of the financial statements is presented prior to you adopting them. What I will do is just give some highlights, I suppose, from the report, and then hand over to Steve to give a bit more detail on the matter that Simon referred to earlier. So as Simon said, and as we've reported throughout the audit, it's been completed fully remotely this year because of COVID, which has been challenging for all involved. I would like to say, put on record my appreciation to kind of Simon and the team for embracing being remotely audited for the first time ever, just as we've learned how to learn how to do it. So have they. So do appreciate the position they're in. When the report was drafted and put onto the agenda, there were, as Simon said, a number of items still outstanding for our audit testing. The majority of those have been completed, but that did identify the one issue that Simon alluded to earlier. What I would say is, subject to the satisfactory completion of that matter and any other finalisation of our file, our proposed audit opinion on the financial statements was going to be an unqualified audit opinion, which is the opinion that as a committee you would like. The one change that members may see from previous audit reports is that it will include an emphasis of matter. Now, this emphasis of matter refers to a national issue linked to COVID-19, and this is where RICS, so the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, issued guidance to all valuers, setting out a material valuation uncertainty when they were undertaking the valuation of land and buildings due to COVID-19 and the impact of the pandemic. So the council discloses that within their financial statements, as their expert has referred to that material valuation uncertainty. We, in our audit opinion, refer to the disclosure in the council's accounts around the valuation uncertainty. So this is appearing in every set of local government accounts around the country, and our approach is consistent around the country as well. So it's not a East Devon specific issue, but that is something slightly different for members to be aware of. The other part of our responsibilities relate to the value for money conclusion. That work has been completed and finalised, and we will be proposing to issue an unqualified opinion on the council's value for money conclusion and value for money arrangements for 1920 as well. So we issue that conclusion at the same time as our opinion on the financial statements. So the next committee, when those financial statements come to you, as I said, we'll bring a slightly updated report to reflect any of the adjustments that I'll get Steve to talk through in just a moment, and talk through that report in more detail. But the high level messages are, subject to the finalisation of these final pieces, unqualified opinions for both financial statements and value for money. The only other point I wanted to make before handing over to Steve is the requirement for the council to publish on its website a notice that the financial statements audit is still ongoing, has already been undertaken. So in terms of legislative requirements, the council has met its legislative requirements in respect of the financial statements. That's all I was going to say, because as I said, I'll probably go through the report in a bit more detail at the next committee to make sure that members have the information fresh in their mind prior to adopting the accounts. And at that stage, I'll just hand over to Steve to talk through a bit more detail of the issue that Simon mentioned earlier.
Right, thank you. Yeah, the issue that we're looking at the moment is, as Simon referred to, a technical accounting issue on the treatment of the additions to the council's HRA properties. Obviously the programs that are every year are huge and cover a lot of properties, and naturally they aren't divided up amongst the houses. They're recorded as additions as one figure. When the revaluation happens at the end of the year, we would expect to see those additions written off as part of the revaluation, so that they're then incorporated into the asset register correctly. And that route of revaluation goes through several statements that form part of the financial statements in a particular way. What the council does currently is to treat them as disposals, so that they're written off as disposals with no sale proceeds. And that takes a different route through the financial statements. Ultimately, they end up in the same place, in the capital adjustment account, but it affects quite a number of entries through the income and expenditure account, through the movement in reserves, and through several notes supporting the statements before finally ending up in the reserves themselves. Now, the issue, we picked up the issue as part of this year's audit. It was also done and has been done for a number of years that way through the statement of accounts. So we've yet to bottom the issue out, but we think that is also going to mean a restatement of the prior year statements. So a prior year adjustment, and that all the accounting entries that will mean through the previous year's statement of accounts. So it's quite complex. I'm quite happy to go into a lot more detail, or if you like John Symes to go into more detail. But the crux of it is it's a material amount of money. It's not been treated, or we don't consider that it's been treated correctly in the statement of accounts, and it will affect the 18-19 and the 19-20 figures.
Thanks, Steve. The other thing I'd just reiterate that Simon mentioned earlier is, and you stated at the beginning, it's a technical accounting adjustment here. So this doesn't impact on the council's usable reserves. Any adjustments will flow through financial statements, but then there's statutory overrides in place for capital accounting entries. So this doesn't impact on the council taxpayer of East Devon, which is an important distinction here as well. But unfortunately, because it's capital accounting, the numbers are very large. And so we need to ensure that materially the financial statements are correct, even though there's no impact on council taxpayers of East Devon. So that's the only other important bit of context I think we need to mention that.
Great, thank you both. Happy now to take comments, queries from members. The only hand I can see at the moment is Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just then qualify for me? Is it this due to a change in legislation from central government, or is it something that the council should have been doing a few years ago and has only just been highlighted, please?
Can I take it? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I'm sure Steve might come in afterwards. No, it's not a change in legislation. It's a methodology that, so as Steve's explained, it's basically capital expenditure during the year written up against housing assets. So that bit's fine. It's then when you come to revalue the assets, how you write out that reduction. Now, we just need to go back into the detail in that we agreed the methodology that we've adopted with previous auditors, and it's the way that our Institute of Public Finance software works. So we're using the IPF system, and that's how we were recommended to reverse these entries back out of the system. And we agreed with our previous auditors that's the way to do it. It's been raised this year as the first year, and having been raised by Grant Thornton through Steve, I actually, on the face of it, agree with what they're saying in terms of how it should be treated. But what we do need to do is just go through and unpick it in terms of, I'm not sure why our previous auditors and why the software deals with it the way it does. And I just need to make sure we understand it fully have that discussion with Grant Thornton before we reach the conclusion of unpicking all of that. But unpicking it is lots of entries, several statements, but the balance sheet figure for your assets will be the same at the end of it, and your general fund, HRA, cash reserves will all be the same at the end of it. But I do understand the point that Grant Thornton are making in terms of the technical way of treating it.
Thanks, Simon. Did Grant Thornton want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that Simon says there. It will have no effect on your usable reserves and your balances, but it is purely technical. It just does affect quite a lot of figures in the accounts.
Thanks. Councillor Gaza, did you want to come back on anything, or are you happy with that?
Yes, please, if I could just
Yes,
come back. Yeah, a question to Simon. So is this going to take a lengthy amount of time for you and your team to achieve, Simon?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's probably where you're going, Councillor, in that my first reaction was, yeah, if we've understood this fully, and I just got that caveat just to double check it, can we just put a note on the accounts to say it has no net effect, we'll get it right in future, can we reach that agreement with the auditors? Because the amount of work involved probably is a good week of one person, I should imagine, maybe a bit less, but it's certainly a good few days of one individual. And then obviously it needs to be checked off by the auditors. Having said that, I understand the view of Grant Thornton of not allowing us just to put a note to it. And I wouldn't come to members of audit and governance with that dilemma of, because it is a £5 million difference of how it's treated. So it's a big number, and I wouldn't want to put members in the position of not altering the accounts if the auditors suggest that we should do as an unadjusted item. I wouldn't be comfortable allowing or asking you to make that call. I think that's probably where you were going, Councillor Gazzard, in terms of can we not do this work, basically.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks. I've got Councillor Bailey next, please.
Thank you. I don't know whether this is the right time to ask, but I've made some notes and I can't actually find the reference to them in the document, but there's reference to working papers, and working papers could be improved, and I wondered if anybody wanted to comment on that. I can't remember where. I've written down that it was page 4, but it doesn't appear to be. And then there was also some comments on comments that had been made last year, and some of them have been ticked as to have been dealt with, but then some of them haven't. That's towards the end of the document, and I just wondered whether Simon or somebody could comment on those, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to pick up the comment around the working papers. We're living in completely different times now, and last year being the first year we conducted the audit back at East Devon, it's much easier to look at a set of working papers, go and ask questions, ask people to talk you through those papers when you're on site, and everything is done face to face. When everything is done electronically, with if you have various levels of experience on both sides, those working papers, we've identified some areas where perhaps they could be tighter, more explanations and those, and we've been dealing with those with John and the team as we've been going through, and it's something we found everywhere, to be honest. It's not specific to East Devon. It is just unusual situations, and working papers that have done for years haven't always filled the criteria when we're all trying to work remotely. And in terms of the follow-up of last year's recommendations, you can see there was 4 recommendations made last year, which we followed up this year, 2 of which were completed. We identified presentational issues relating to property, plant and equipment, and the asset register last year. Well, clearly, we are talking about an error in the accounts around the fixed asset register. So those presentational things haven't all been resolved through that. And the authorization of journals is something that we are particularly keen on. It's not a particular procedure that's factored in at East Devon, and therefore the need to authorize journals has not been addressed, and that's a control and a risk that the finance team accept and we'll take forward.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. I can see no more blue hands on the. Oh, I can see a physical hand, so we'll go to Councillor King.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was having difficulty again with buttons. On page 7, there's a remark about the pension fund, and it mentions it as a risk. And I'd just like to hear a few words to expand on that, because it is a risk that's lurking in the background. We all know what's happening to the stock markets, and I'm sure that quite a lot of the reserves for the pension fund are invested in the stock markets. Can you tell me what sort of approach you're going to take? Because if the economy starts sliding badly, the pension fund will go with it, yet the demands to service the pension fund will remain, and it could therefore loom very large. Can you give me some comments on it, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to take some comments on that. So the risk we outline in our audit findings report is around the valuation of the net liability. So obviously there's a gross liability, and then the gross assets that you refer to that are managed on behalf of the council by Devon Pension Fund. The net value of that is reflected in the council's accounts, and the council employs an actuary to calculate that liability in line with accounting standards each year. So because it's a large number, because it's an estimate, there's lots of assumptions built into that calculation by the actuary. That is why it's a significant risk for our audit approach. And this also links to an agenda item later on today's agenda around the Redmond review and some of the comments coming out of that, because regulators, our regulators as auditors, are particularly interested in large estimates, so the valuation of land and buildings, valuation of pensions. Similar to what we have said about the valuation of land and buildings, a lot of the changes in value in the council's pension liability, again, don't impact on the council taxpayer, as there's statutory overrides in place, which mean it moves to unusable reserves. Now, the challenge is, and Simon may want to talk about this briefly after I have, the pension fund is subject to a triennial review. So every 3 years, the actuary comes in to set the funding level and also the contribution levels moving forward. Now, clearly, as you said, if the asset value significantly reduces, there are still liabilities being incurred or being created by all of the members of the pension scheme. Now, one option that the actuary therefore may need to take is to increase contribution levels for each of the councils. Now, that would have an impact on the amount of money that East Devon has and your kind of medium-term financial plan. So that is an element of risk for future finances. In terms of the accounting for it and the risk in our audit findings report, that's very much on the accounting and the valuation as at 31st of March 2020. But moving forward, that's absolutely the right question to be asking around what could that mean for pension contributions moving forward that need to be paid by East Devon.
And just to add to that, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah, exactly as Jackson described. The other side of it is, I mean, the local government pension scheme is a balanced scheme over set years. So the one side is the contributions paid by the individual authorities, but on the other side is also the scheme itself and what the defined benefits are. So in addition to the contributions, the scheme will also look at how beneficial it is and what adjustments might be required going forward to reduce those liabilities. So there's a couple of elements that will come into play.
Thanks, everyone. Can't see any more blue hands. I think based on what we've got in front of us at the moment, it's only to note the progress and where we are with the audit. Councillor Cahill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is the right time to raise this, but I'm sure you can put me right if I've got it wrong. When we talk about assets of the district authority and governance, I would like to know how we actually govern our fleets within the street scene setup. And I see a lot of vehicles, especially announcing the fact that we've got some electric vehicles online, which is a good thing. Also is going to save the environment and hopefully save money. But in terms of governance of our fleet of vehicles, I often see vehicles outside people's houses, and I wondered how that was managed in terms of HMRC and the benefit in kind for staff members in using a company vehicle to drive home and drive to work. I've even seen an East Devon District Council fall before in Teignmouth. Now I know that there's no street scene depots in Teignmouth, that's for sure. So how does that work in terms of governance of our assets in terms of fleets?
Thanks, Councillor Cahill. I'm not sure it necessarily fits in with this item, but I'll happily let Simon speak on it if you've got something to add for now, whether it's something just to be taken on further later.
Well, I can answer quickly. The Teambridge example, obviously, I can't answer, so you might need to give me some details after the meeting of that, which would be quite interesting. But in terms of our fleet of vehicles, they're used solely for work, so there's no tax liability. The majority will be taken home, and the first point of work is from the individual officer's home, so they would travel straight to work with street scene, rather than coming into a depot or coming back to Blackdown House to drive their own vehicle to then pick up a council vehicle to work. They will work from their door and go to their first call. So from a tax liability, there isn't any, but clearly they shouldn't be used for any personal use. And you know, if you've got any incidences, I'd be interested to know that, but outside the meeting would be better.
Well, Simon, I would reply in that, and that I dispute that, because I walk my dogs down near the depot in Camberdown Terrace. I see lots of vehicles actually turn out first thing in the morning and go to the depot. I would question how many vehicles are parked in the depot, how many we own, and you know, I can't actually say from a perspective of what you've just said that everything is used to go to a job of work. It's a benefit in kind if they're using these vehicles to travel home and park outside their house. Lots of other employees and lots of other organisations are not allowed to do this because it's a tax liability with the revenue.
If I can, for the chair, I'll pick up separately with you, Councillor, if you like, in that we've got exemptions in place that I can evidence to you that you may find interesting.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I just say I would concur with Councillor Cahill's comments, and if, as Simon has said, we have procedures or policies in place, I think it would be interesting and beneficial if members of the Audit and Governance could see those, or whether Simon comes back with a report on how vehicles are looked after and what responsibilities staff and that have to take them home, because I fully support what Councillor Cahill says. I don't know about the Teignmouth situation, but there are in Exmouth plenty of vehicles that are parked up outside the individuals' homes. So, you know, I think probably as a committee, I think we would be interested to see those sorts of documents that you're on about, Simon.
Through the chair, if you wish a report back, we can add that to the forward plan.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments on the annual accounts? I think, as Simon just mentioned about a report coming forward, I suggest we put that on the forward plan when we get to that item here. So I'm happy to leave this at just noting this report if others are happy to do so.
Yeah, move that we note, Chair.
Yep, thank you. I'm happy to second that. So if I can get ticks and crosses.
So the vote is now taking place. And I have 7 in agreement, so that's carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So on to item number 10, which is the Redmond review of the local authority financial reporting and audit. And that's over to Simon, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I won't add much more than what's in the report. I've tried to highlight the key elements of the Redmond review. There are elements that will need to come through in legislation, elements in codes of practice. I've picked out some specific recommendations that your chair also wanted putting forward for debate. I think there's 2 aspects really in terms of the complexity of local authorities' accounts and how the benefit to the public in terms of the reading of those accounts. And that clearly needs addressing and was picked up in the review. And also, interestingly, the audit arrangements that at the moment does feel, from my opinion, to be broken in terms of the ability to deliver the audits on time, and also in terms of the complexity of the accounts then leads to the complexity of what's required in auditing. But it is interesting that this committee, when the new arrangements came in for the current audit regime, had significant doubts about the delivery of audit, mainly to do with the pricing of tenders, and whether the work could actually be completed under the tenders that were submitted. And I think that's a big element of what's now come true. But other than that, I didn't really want to add anything more. I know your chair and vice chair probably know this report as well as I do in terms of the details. So just happy to take any questions, really, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, as you've already alluded to, one of the points I pulled out of it that I did quite think was appropriate was around this suitably qualified independent member. We've literally just heard about a rather complicated accounting matter, which I think helps make the point here. If we've got someone, this is about knowledge, it's not about politics. It doesn't matter which way you are on the spectrum here, it's whether it follows an accounting standard or not, and that's a slightly different matter. So that's why I've asked Simon to sort of work and see if we can incorporate that in some way. Councillor Bailey, please.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a really good idea. I don't know how we would do it, whether we would have an independent non-voting member like we have on the standards committee, but I think that it is like speaking in a different language, and I don't speak that language. So yes, I think that is a really good idea.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands. As it kind of was my suggestion in first, but I'm happy to propose regarding the recommendation number 2, if anyone's happy to second that.
I'll second that.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Steve, were you trying to speak on that item?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to second it, but I got beaten to it.
Excellent. So on that basis, are we happy to vote, please?
So for the benefit of those watching online, the vote is now taking place. And you have 8 in favour now that Councillor Hayward has joined you, Chair, and no against and no abstentions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Item number 11 is the RIPA update. The RIPA Senior Responsible Officer advises that there have been no requests for RIPA authorisation since the last committee. Just to provide an update to members, I know from our last meeting we'd asked for a report just to flesh out what the RIPA update really is. You might have picked up on the forward plan. There is a RIPA update and policy review scheduled for the next meeting, where Henry was already looking to provide a plan around the policy in that. So it's just been folded into the next meeting so we can have a bigger concentrated part on it rather than try and do it piecemeal, partly today and partly next month. That nicely takes us on to our agenda item number 12, which is the audit and governance forward plan. Are members happy with the forward plan?
Chairman, I've got something, so I couldn't find my hand there.
Go ahead.
I do apologise. It's actually just a technical one, I suspect. In the last few days, we've agreed to spend £1 million or thereabouts in supporting the operations of LED. Looking at the forward plan, desperately trying to find my right page here, we've got reference to the right page. Sorry, I did have all my notes ready. I just got momentarily distracted. It's page 49, isn't it? With regard to the forward plan, so on the 28th of January, we've got a risk management review. Will that added burden of £1 million and potential impact be included in that, or will it come into internal audit activity for Q3, although obviously we're in Q4 now? So I just want to be clear as to where that will sit at some point for us to scrutinise, or not to scrutinise, but to have assurance that everything's okay with regard to that money, because we're coming up to the budget time as well. So I just want to be clear that we've got money accounted for, either coming from reserves or wherever it's coming from. So I just want to know whereabouts it will sit for us to look at that and at what stage. Probably is one for Simon, I suspect.
I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking of pointing it that way.
So through you, Chair. In terms of the additional budget approved by Council for LED, that's already been through, is already included in our financial monitoring reports. So that sort of financial cost and implication has already been reported through to Cabinet and is reflected in our outturn position, encompassing all the other effects of COVID-19, reduction of income, additional other costs that we're incurring. And at the moment, with the government funding included and the reimbursement of fees and charges, the authority has in the order of 1.4 million deficit to find in the current financial year. That's going to be taken from the general fund balance, which has been left at a level to be able to cope with that in the current financial year, based on the outturn of last year. So in terms of the question, if I think I've understood it right, the financial prudence and allowing for that sum to LED has already been factored into our financial position for the current year and how we're going to fund it. If the question is more around the governance and scrutiny of that payment, whether it be the correct sum to pay or mitigation has been taken into account, and we're protecting the ratepayers' purse, if you like. New forum has been set up that will have some independent advice in there to ensure that that sign off of those sums are reasonable and accurate. Also, I will be involved in that process as well. So that's, as I see, the governance procedure over those payments. That forum, I'm assuming, reports through, the minutes will come back through Cabinet for overview. Consider it not overview committee, but Cabinet in terms of the monitoring process. So that's as I see the governance arrangements, Councillor Twist. If that covers
Thank you very much, Simon. It's actually the latter part of that, because I suppose my concern where I'd be looking for assurance is that I wouldn't particularly want to be in the same position, say 12 months down the track, where we get a revisit from LED looking for the same amount, and we've treated them perhaps disproportionately advantageously. So the forum's a good thing, to look at their business operation model and so on. But the point is, I am assured, Chair, that it will be looked at in the appropriate way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Twist. Councillor Gazzard, please. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, a question to Simon. Every so often we get a report back on the risk registers. Will the LED be put onto the risk register?
Yeah, our key partners are recorded on the risk register, and in terms of COVID-19, some months ago in March, they were raised in terms of the risks associated. So they have their own, obviously, risk registers as well as a independent company, charity, but they are also included as a key partner for us in our risk register and already there, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the forward plan, as we've postponed 3 of our main items on this agenda, are they going to be added to the 28th of January meeting, or are we having a separate meeting?
Simon, I think you referred to potentially an extra meeting.
That would be my preference, but it will depend on timing and Grant Thornton's availability. But ideally, I'd like to get them signed off before the 28th of January to close last year's accounts.
Thank you, Chair. And Simon.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands up. I'm just aware that obviously we talked about the vans issue a couple of items ago. Simon, is it too soon to be able to suggest that's on a particular date on the forward plan, or is this something to leave you to work on and you can report back to members informally through email and then?
No, if you like, there was an element I just wanted to check the committee's view, and also we can schedule it in for perhaps the 18th of March forward plan in terms of giving the team time to put together a report. But I just wanted to confirm what the committee want, because there are 2 ways of taking this. It could be that members wish the use of our vehicle fleet to be looked at by SWAP as a SWAP report. So they'll independently perhaps look at the controls, the practices, make sure that we're covering off the tax liabilities correctly, and we can put together a remit with yourself, Chair, and maybe other councillors who are particularly concerned about this area. So we can either get SWAP to look at it as a particular audit and report through, or we could just ask street scene, head of street scene, service lead, to do a report on current practices and procedures, and then for me to add in about the tax elements and financial elements. So it's whether we just want a service report or you want an audit, I suppose. I don't know how your committee feel.
Thanks. Councillor Cahill, obviously you raised this, so I'll invite you to make comment first, please.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, it's a very large asset within our estate. When was it last reviewed? When was it last audited? You tell me, Simon. I don't know. If it was quite a long time ago, perhaps it would be timely to review our vehicle estate and how the costs are expended in the whole structure of our vehicle estate. If it's timely to do a review of the vehicle estate, then I think it would be worth doing a complete audit.
Okay.
Councillor Gazzard.
Yes, Chair. I think to get a review undertaken by SWAP would be the best thing to do, if Councillor Cahill was happy with that.
Can I take that as a proposal then?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
If I take it as a proposal from Councillor Gazzard and then a seconded by Cahill, I think that was a nod in agreement. So that's then partly for SWAP to obviously do a internal audit on that element. And then we've obviously got the forward plan as it is. I can't see any more blue hands, so are we happy to take those two votes? Green
And
tick.
for those watching online, the vote is now taking place. And we have 8 in favour, Chair, none against and no abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And that brings our meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
However, can I just remind all those present, the sporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. Until then, your comments will be live to the public.
Thank you.